Axis Mundi, the world tree, connects the many layers, worlds, and facets of our universe. The lower world of watery roots provides access points to deep self-knowledge and the realms of those who have come before us. The midworld of earth and form holds humanity and all physical things, a bridge where connections emerge. And the upper world, billowing in its airy canopy, expands with spirit and the magic of source. Traveling these roads of the Axis Mundi is you, a fiery spark of conscious life. Through this podcast, we meet beyond time and space to explore the information found along the vast arterial pathways of the universal Axis Mundi. In each episode, follow your unique compass through this journey of self-knowledge, taking what resonates and leaving the rest. My name is Meg Bartlett, and this is the Axis Channel. Hello and welcome to the Axis Channel. My name is Meg Bartlett, and today we are exploring our third episode. This one is about aliens, some of my recent encounters and experiences with kind of ending up on craft. And this is the first time I think I'm ever talking about this. This is something that's been happening lately. And I just want to share a couple of these experiences with you because I myself have really struggled with fear around, extraterrestrials, and just kind of really overcoming that has been a big milestone for me. And I'm still I still have fear, but but we're working on it. The process is constant, right? Now, at the beginning of every episode, I'm going to start including this bit about taking what resonates and leaving the rest. I know it's in the intro, but we're also just going to talk about that very briefly. I believe that my purpose is to share information and to expose as many people as possible to different types of ideas about the universe, spirituality, all of the different layers of the Axis Mundi, and what that might mean for you. As I'm exposing you to these information and layers, some of them may resonate, and that's fantastic. Take them, run with them, explore them a little bit more. What do they mean to you? What do they mean in the context of your life? But if they don't resonate, that's equally as important. And this is because I can help you with your own process of elimination. If it doesn't resonate for you, great, check it off, cross it off, and move on to the next thing. And you can also ask yourself, why doesn't this resonate with me? Do I feel like I've experienced something completely different? Ooh, that's interesting. Why don't I explore that a little bit more and see where that leads me? So all of this is just to expose you to a concept to get you to think more about your life in either direction. Okay, let's talk about some of my most recent experiences. We're going to talk about two main ones. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I've encountered these beings in the past without really knowing then what I know now and sort of the context that it's given me as a whole. But first, I just want to talk about the difference between encounters with ETs and abductions. So usually when people think about like an alien abduction, it's like, in our pop culture, it's a very scary experience. There's a lot of movies out there with a negative connotation around that, being poked and prodded and, you end up on a craft and you're disoriented and all of these things. This is not my experience. So I believe that abductions can occur because there certainly are people out there who have experienced them, and they can be really traumatic and triggering experiences for people. In that case, I believe either that it was not asked for and something just happened where they didn't have good boundaries in waking life, and maybe there was just something out there that picked up on that. Or maybe they thought that they were ready to process it, but really when it came time, it was just so jarring for them that they could not process the event. And maybe it wasn't negative at all, but they perceived it as negative because their reality was not yet able to hold on to that information. An encounter to me is something that is agreed upon between yourself and another being or series of beings, like a collective, whatever it is. So all of my experiences, I know that I have been asking for this. Now, I have not consciously been asking for this, but I know that my soul is so curious. My spirit yearns to know all there is to know. And one of those things is really, what is it like to experience, another being from another galaxy, from another solar system? Something that is not human, what is that experience? And so I know that on some level, I firmly believe that these encounters have been agreed upon. And I'm just trying to help myself ease into it as much as I can while still exposing myself to a lot. So I'm kind of making a big ask of myself here because it is kind of just very unsettling because it's something totally out of this world, literally. But it's also something that I know is going to expand me in a way, and I'm very curious about it, and I feel very safe in these experiences. And I want to let you know that right off the bat. I believe that most encounters that we have are safe, and I believe that, really it's just up to you and your perception about how you want to have the experience. And if anyone out there, if you are listening to this and maybe you find yourself in the dream space in an alien encounter or something like that, you have control. You can say no. You can put up your boundaries. You can call in your guides, your angels, your ancestors, your whole team, the whole shebang. Call all those people in and ask them to be with you, right? Like ask them to help you in any moment where you might feel uncomfortable. I just want to put that out there because you absolutely are in control of your own experience. So that said, let's dive in a little bit. So I have been working with astral travel for a while, but I'm not an expert, right? And so even though I'm a dream interpreter, most of that experience lies in the psychological realm. Now, I have a lot of spiritual dreams that we talk about, but that's more in the sense of imagery, which is also psychological. When we talk about spiritual dream experiences, this is kind of the realm of, like I'm going off and astral traveling, or I'm actually finding myself in the Akashic records, or, I'm just like really exploring, really expansive. I know it's not just about the imagery. I know there's something else to this. So these experiences are relatively new for me. I would say within the last year or so, I've been really diving off. And astral travel specifically started back in October of 2023 for me. So this is something that I know that I had been doing it a little bit, but I really started doing it often, and it has continued to grow. By the way, if you hear movement in the background, my dog Daruk is here with me today. He's keeping me company, and he's just going to be our little buddy here for a while. Also, he is in this dream, so we will get to that in a bit. He's just a big ham. Okay, so back to the astral travel. I've been really trying to expand and get to know my astral travel experience. For me, this is almost an out-of-body experience, right? So it's definitely, I can feel myself leaving my physical body, but I'm in two bodies at once. And we'll talk about that more in the future. But it's been just a really fascinating experience. And most of my encounters with ETs have been in the dream space in sort of that astral type of vibe. And there's a very specific reason for that. Our dreams are the easiest place for us to digest difficult content. So when you think about nightmares, right? Nightmares are usually you trying to get your own attention on something that is difficult for you to process. So where is fear in my life? Where might I be feeling dissonance, or what might I not be acknowledging that really is crucial for me to see right now? And we bring this up in our dream space because we know when we wake up that it's not real, quote unquote, like it's not really affecting us here in the 3D exactly as it was depicted in the dream, but it also is bringing it to our attention. So dreams are a fantastic space for exploring all of those difficult things, or just for processing content or things in our lives that are really difficult for us to experience on a very waking life 3D conscious level. So as I've been diving into astral travel, I've been also exposing myself to a lot of different experiences that are honestly difficult to comprehend, right? And it's something where, I've had a lot of fear before. I used to be really afraid of astral travel. I was afraid that I wouldn't find my way back to my body. Newsflash, you always will. So that's one of the fears that I've had to conquer. With the ET encounters, this is another thing where my whole life I have kind of been afraid of the alien thing, which is funny because now I'm a galactic historian and I know this about myself and I'm starting to step into this role. So it kind of makes sense. But when you think about, the context of existence, my whole life has been confronting my fears and doing something about it. And so I know that whenever I encounter fear, this is actually a lesson for me, and I can actually become really powerful just in my own self-knowledge in whatever concept this is. And I can really help myself expand wherever I feel fear. So this first encounter that I had this on December 28th, 2023. So we're going back just a couple of months here. And I had been in and out of my body maybe 20 times that night, just in and out, in and out. And this has been a constant theme for me. It's just getting me used to the process, right? Like this is what it feels like. Just get comfortable with what it feels like. I'm just hanging out in my bedroom, right? Like, my physical body is on the bed, but I'm walking around, like looking at the door, looking in my closet, I'm in my bedroom, but I'm next to myself and I'm just getting used to this concept. So it was like I was priming myself for something, right? So it's like, all right, get comfortable with this. Okay, cool. I feel really comfortable with this. I'm feeling good. What's next? And boy, did I find out what was next. So I have this inner knowing, and I know that I didn't remember the fullness of this dream because I was not in a place to safely comprehend it yet. I would have taken it with too much fear, and I probably would have shut myself down in a way. So there's, sometimes we don't remember our dreams for specific purposes, and it's to help us, we'll come into the information when we're ready for it, sort of thing. So in this instance, I had known there was something ET-ish around me. There was something in the dream space that was going on in this realm. And I was a little apprehensive. And all of a sudden, my astral body opens its eyes from my physical body. So my astral body and my physical body are within each other, right? They're holding the same space, but I am not consciously awake yet, but I open my astral eyes and I look down at the foot of my bed and there is a little green man there. And it's almost comical for me to say that because it's so stereotypical. He wasn't thin, so I could say it was a little bit different. He was almost like a dwarf or gnomish in a way, but definitely green, definitely an ET of some sort, maybe like 3 feet tall. And I kind of like I held my breath and I kind of got the grip of fear was there. And I was like, wait, I don't have to be afraid. I'm going to be okay. Just repeating this mantra to myself. And I kind of look around the room a little bit and I can tell that there are metallic hints of space around me. And I get the feeling that I'm not really in my bedroom, but I'm on some sort of a craft. And they're just kind of, either the ETs are helping me to bring my own bedroom imagery into this space, or I am helping myself by putting my own bedroom imagery onto this space, right? To help me comprehend it. And I remember looking at this little dude and I said, and I quote, "Hey there, little green man. I think this might be a bit much for me right now. Can we try again another time?" And now that I say it, like it was so funny. I woke up and I laughed, but at the time I was like, I was trying to be like, hey, I see you, but also I don't want to right now. So he was very respectful. He backed away. The imagery went away and I woke up a few minutes later. So that was the first encounter. And of course I wake up from this and I go wake up my husband. I'm like, you would not believe what just happened to me, And as I'm sharing this, I remember when I was a kid, my little brother used to have encounters with aliens that used to really freak me out. And he called them the green beans. And it's one of those things where, when you're a 3-year-old kid, you don't really have a whole lot of words to explain everything unexplainable that's happening to you. And so these beings, he called them the green beans because they were the color of green beans and they were kind of long and stickish and just interesting, I guess. But he used to freak our parents out by telling them that these green beans would pull him through the walls. And it got to the point where he was like, no, they pull me through the walls and they pull me through the spaces in the walls. And my parents were like, what do you mean the spaces in the walls? And he was like, well, there's big sticks in the walls. And he was talking about the studs, like the studs inside the wall. And my parents were like, okay, where are the sticks in the walls? Can you point them out? And he was like, yep, they're right here. They're right here. And he was like, and they pull me between the sticks. And lo and behold, that was exactly where the studs were in the walls. So pretty freaky. As a kid, my parents definitely did not like that. That was something like, like, all right, we need to stop this. This isn't okay. But I remember being really afraid and being like, shit, I hope they don't come for me because I don't want that. So that was kind of like early childhood memory. And then, coming back to this experience that I had in December, I was like, oh my God, like that was a little green man, like was that a green bean? I don't know. Do they know who I am? Do they know our family connection? What is that? So I don't have answers for that, but that was just I woke up and I was like, okay, this is getting real. This is getting really real. Like it's kind of been a theme in my life and I don't know where it's going. Fast forward, I had another experience about a month ago, and this was the most impactful one. And I actually found myself on a craft, and I actually realized that I had met these same beings about 10 years earlier. So this most recent encounter was another astral travel dream. But during these dreams, I can tell what's different from my psychological perspective, just me figuring out my memories and all of the thoughts that I need to process and things like that, and what is actually an experience. And this is one of the benefits of dream work. I'll just throw this in here. If you really, like hone in on your dreams, dream journal every day, even if you don't remember something, write something down, just getting into the habit of observing your dreams, you can really open yourself up to the understanding of yourself, and you can better discern what is something that you're just experiencing within you and what is something extra. So this experience was one of those extra experiences. And this one started with me sort of ascending through the ceiling. So I definitely had a feeling of, oh, okay, it's time to go now. And my astral body ascended through the roof, and I could feel myself passing through the layers. And it was, I don't even have words to describe it, but I could tell when I had passed through the ceiling, and then I could tell again when I had passed through the outer layer of the roof. And then it was sort of just, I was surrounded by this light. This all sounds very stereotypical, but honestly, this is what happened. And I ascended into a craft that was stationed in orbit above my house. I sort of come to because I didn't really feel myself moving into the craft. It was more like, okay, I'm about to enter the craft. Okay, now I'm in the craft. I come into this conscious moment. Okay, I'm inside a craft, and I look around, and immediately I start laughing. And I know without a doubt that my spirit has been communicating with these ETs outside of my conscious waking life. Maybe this is in the dream space. Maybe this is outside of time. I don't fucking know. But I know that I had been so cautious and so I really wanted to have this experience and not be afraid of it, that I made some direct asks, and they obliged, and they were unnecessary. But I guess it's some comic relief for me. So I opened my eyes in this craft, and I can tell that, it's definitely an alien spaceship. It's definitely some sort of metal, just some sort of metal, right? That's all around me. It's silver, but they took white shiplap and they put it on the walls in like an attempt to try and make it feel homey. And that's like the most white girl thing I think is out there. And it was so funny. I just started laughing. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is what I asked for. Holy shit, Meg. Like, are we for real right now? And I just laughed, and I was like, okay, all right. They're taking me seriously. They respect my boundaries. And this is just funny. And then I heard them in my head also laughing. So I didn't actually see them, but I could tell that they were there with me, and they were just observing. They were hanging back because they didn't want me to freak out and lose it, right? To pop out of the experience. And we're just like, they're just listening. They're not really pushing. They're not prodding. They're just like gently letting me explore and get used to being on this craft. So I start walking around. We have the white shiplap walls and metal behind them. And I find this control panel, and it's all red and green objects and lights. And I'm inspecting it, but I'm also definitely not touching it. And I remember having the thought, I'm not going to touch that because I don't want to die. Like, I don't want to fuck something up and be sucked out into space or anything like that. And they're kind of laughing. They're like, don't worry, we wouldn't, let you do that. And then I find this big window. It's floor to ceiling. And I walk up to it, and I can see Earth from space. And I almost start crying in the dream. It is so beautiful. It is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my life. And I just start, like, I have this big expansive feeling, right? And I'm just standing there and I'm like, oh my God, this is Earth from space. I get to see Earth from space, and this is what it looks like. I don't know if I'm ever going to have this opportunity again. And so I let it sink in and just wash over me. And after a certain point, I actually get a little too overwhelmed. And I walk to the center of the room and I'm like, okay, I want to keep going, but I'm definitely overwhelmed. I sit down and I meditate. This is the first time I think I've ever remembered or recalled meditating in a dream. So I sit down in the middle of this craft and I just meditate. I slow my breathing. I really just calm myself down. And once I feel like I'm ready, I get up again and I explore a little bit more. So I walk back to the corner where I started from, and I see that there's actually like a table there for me, right? Like there's some items that have been placed out for me. And there's clothing there because I sleep in the nude. And so apparently in this dream, I was also in the nude, which I didn't feel exposed at all. Like I felt very, very safe. So I just want to just throw that out there. That might be a little weird for some people, but I totally felt fine and safe in the dream. So I end up walking over and there's clothing that's set out for me to just help me feel even more comfortable, right? But all of the clothing was clothing that I had worn in the military. It was like jeans that I had worn at that point in time. It was, military t-shirts that I had worn at that point in time. And I got really confused and I was like, what is this? Like, this is so weird. Like, what a weird choice. Why would I go with that? And I recognized not only are they clothing from the time that I was in the military, but they're specifically clothing that I brought with me to Afghanistan. So I deployed in 2015 to Afghanistan with a government agency. And so it was kind of like a joint command. So I was only one of two Marines that deployed on this mission. And there was Navy people and Air Force and even a couple coasties with us. So it was just a really interesting experience. But this clothing that they had for me was what I had worn in Afghanistan. And I'll clarify this by saying that sometimes when we left the base, I was not wearing a uniform. So even though I was part of the Marine Corps, some of the work I was doing, I had to wear jeans for it, right? Just kind of, it's a whole thing. So anyways, and I realized, I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And it wasn't until a couple of days later, when I was still coming back to this experience, that I realized I had met them before. And I have seen Earth from space in my waking life before, but I hadn't thought of it in that context. And we'll throw this in right now and then we'll carry on with the whole encounter experience. When I was in Afghanistan, I was a 2621, which for the Marine Corps, that's the signals intelligence. So that's my MOS. That was my job. I did a lot of stuff with communications equipment, right? And one of my jobs was to go out on some of these missions to different areas and different bases on Afghanistan and just help some of the equipment, right? On this particular mission that I had gone on, I went with a contractor named Rob, and we just were a pair. We flew over in a fixed wing Cessna. And, it's kind of got all of the interior pulled out and it's just kind of, it's just seats and it's a metal tube and you're just kind of flying over the mountains and you're like, all right, this is really rickety and kind of sketch, but okay, whatever. So we get to our station and we get our job done. And a couple days later, we're ready to leave and go back to Bagram Air Force Base. And as we were waiting for the flight to pick us up, we're again thinking it's going to be another fixed wing Cessna, but who ends up walking through the door are two pilots, like kind of hotshot, high-ranking pilots. And we're like, okay, these are not the dudes who fly the Cessna. Who the fuck are these guys? And they're like, are you Rob and Corporal Niemer, which is who I was at the time? And we're like, yeah, that's us. And they were like, all right, well, we're going to pick you up today. There's been a change in plans. And we kind of look at each other, and Rob has done multiple tours in Afghanistan. He's like, this has never happened before. What is going on? Turns out there were two high-ranking individuals who were supposed to be going somewhere else that day, and they had gotten a Learjet. So like a fancy jet, like leather seat, like definitely not a fixed wing Cessna, right? So they had gotten this Learjet all fueled, all ready to go. It had hot coffee and donuts waiting for them inside this jet. And these high-ranking people changed the plans at the last minute, or something else changed the plans for them. And so they decided they weren't going to go, but the plane was already ready to go, right? Like they had to use the fuel. So they were like, well, we'll just take these guys back because, we'll just use the fuel that way. And Rob looks at me and he goes, this has never happened before. This is your first time here. How do you get so lucky? And there's a couple other things that had happened on my deployment where I just got really lucky. So I was like, I don't know, Rob, but let's go. Let's buckle up. So we get into this Learjet. We're buckled up. The pilots are talking to us. They're like, talk to us, ask us questions during the flight. And I'm like, this is so random. Like, this is really, really weird. And we have to do a combat takeoff, right? Which is like, you go as fast as possible, as straight up as possible to avoid getting shot down. And we just, it's kind of like, you're thrown back in a roller coaster. And so we take off and we're like, the G-force is just like throwing us back in the seat. And we're like, holy shit, like this is definitely not a fixed wing Cessna. And we end up getting so high up in the atmosphere that I just plastered my face to the window. And the whole flight, I could have been asking these dudes any question I wanted in the world. And I couldn't find any words because I remember just gluing my face to the window and looking at Earth from space. Now, I wasn't in space, but I was so close. It was like I could see black, and then I could see the different shades of blue that made up the atmosphere. And I have chills just thinking of that memory, right? And I remember saying the exact same thing that I said in that dream. Wow, this is Earth from space. I don't think I'm ever going to have this opportunity again. I have to completely soak in the moment. And that's the entire flight back to our base. I just sat with my face plastered to the window, looking at Earth from as far out as I thought I was ever going to get. Now, coming back to this encounter and thinking about that time in Afghanistan and thinking about this encounter that I had most recently, I have so many questions, and I don't have answers quite yet, but, what was the purpose? Did I originally meet them in that space? I mean, the whole flight, I was zoned out. I just looked out the window the whole time. And before I knew it, we were landing. It was a total time slip. Was that a communication, but I wasn't ready to process it consciously yet? Were they getting to know me then? Did we make a contract then? I have all of these questions, and I think some of them are yes, but I also don't know the full purpose. So let's come back to the encounter and finish it out. So I'm looking at the clothing, right? I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. It's from Afghanistan. I choose some of the items and put them on. And then I get to the point where, and I open the packet up and I start laughing again because I know this was another request that I had made to try and help myself feel better in the situation, but it was totally over the top. So like kind of unnecessary here. And I open it up and I see at the top, your name is Meg. And I was like, oh, really? Like, great, Meg. I'm really glad you asked for this. And then it was it was a whole packet of information about me. It was all of my core memories, all of the people that have ever really impacted me in my life. It was just lists and lists of information. And it was so fascinating. And I was like, wow, I was really trying to look out for myself here. So as much as I'm laughing, I'm really grateful that I put that much thought and effort into this. And I wanted myself to succeed. I wanted myself to not fear. And I did succeed, right? I was making it through this experience. And the interesting part about this packet was actually the list of pets. And this is where Daruk comes in. So we have one dog right now, and we are currently looking for another one. And at the time that I had this dream, we had made that decision. We were like, yep, we're ready to bring another dog into our life. We are actively looking for probably another pit bull or a Staffordshire, like a bully breed, because we're pity people. And we were just really starting to think about it. And I saw this list of pets and I saw Daruk's name. and I saw a name above his. And I got so excited in the dream. I was like, oh my gosh, like we have a contract with another dog that's going to come into our life. Now, we haven't found that dog yet, but it was just so fascinating. And yes, for those of you who are like, did you get the name? Yes, there was a name there. But I was told that the name wasn't important because the name changes every time a foster legally changes it, or every time that someone puts something out there on like a pet finder app or, something like that. However they name the animal on paper, online, or something like that, however they present the name, it can change. So the name doesn't matter. But it was something like Zeke or Maya. It was a 4-letter word and it had 2 vowels, and the vowels were the same, just for anyone who was curious about that. Now, the other interesting part was it was not just Daruk and this other animal and some of my other past pets. It was every single animal or pet that I have ever lived with. So not pets that I have owned, but pets that I have just been under the same roof with, and maybe a roommate owned them, or maybe they belonged to a family, that was visiting or something like that, like people who were just stopping by, but the pet was spending some time here, that sort of thing. And it was a big list. I have moved many times in my life. And this was just fascinating because I've lived with so many different people and I've lived with so many different pets, and they each have taught me something. And I kind of asked about it. I asked the ETs who were kind of still telepathically there. I asked them about this. And I have to interrupt and just say at this moment, Daruk is laying on his back with his paws up in the air and his tummy up. And he's just so cute. So he's definitely playing into the cuteness factor of this moment. But it was every pet, from my hamster Mara from, like the 7th grade or something like that, up until, my most recent pet. And it was family dogs, and like all of these just amazing animals in my life. And I got the sense of knowing that it doesn't matter if you own a pet legally or not. If you call the same space home, they are impacting your life and you have a contract with them. You are learning something from that animal. You are sharing something with them. And it's not just the space. You're sharing so much more. And so when whatever animals are in your life, even if they're your family's animals and you go over to your parents' house, like every weekend, which we do. And so my in-laws will know this, like they have 3 dogs. And I now know that those 3 dogs are on my list. And I'm learning something from them because that's our family home. That's our family gathering space, and they're under that roof. And so it was just such a wonderful epiphany, I guess, for me, that I hadn't even considered that before. So if you are someone listening to this and you have had a lot of pets in your life, but maybe you didn't own them, you can call them your pets in some aspect, right? Because you shared the same roof. You learned something from each other. You shared space. You interacted with them. There's a purpose to it. So after I was looking at the packet and getting through the pet thing, I could tell that I was reaching my limit. And I ended up calling it off and I descended back into my body. And I didn't get to necessarily meet them face to face. I think I'm still honestly working up to that. There have been a couple other experiences since then, but they've been kind of minor. But I'm still, it's still there. And it's like just waiting for the opportune time. And as I physically woke up, I sat up in bed and I just had the sense of knowing that this spacecraft and these beings are here to not only work with me, but to protect me in a way as well. And I know that right now they are still stationed directly above my house up in, I don't know, the stratosphere, or maybe even so far outside, like maybe entirely outside of the atmosphere, but they are over my direct location and they are holding the airspace. And there's something comforting about it. And to some people that might sound really weird, but for me, it really does feel comforting. And I know that this is going to progress somewhere else. And I know that I'm still learning things. And I'll keep you posted, but this has just been so fascinating, right? Like my life is just getting more and more fascinating the more that I experience of it and the more that I learn about myself. So I would say this, as we're kind of coming to the end of this episode, if you have had any encounters where you feel fear, fear is an invitation to challenge yourself. It's an invitation to say, Do I really need to fear this? Or is this a lesson that I can learn? Why do I really fear this? It's asking you to look within yourself. It's asking you to say, I am more than just my fear. And when you acknowledge that, and when you start to do the work, you can really start to experience these just crazy things that are so amazing and make my life just so fascinating. I love it. I love learning. I love everything that I'm stepping into. I'm just so curious about everything. So with that, we're going to go ahead and bring this episode to a close. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Send me a note on my website. Follow me on social media. I'm only really on Instagram at Meg Bartlett Oracle. Go ahead and follow me there. I have a ton of events coming up. There's definitely more to come. Go ahead and get on my email list if you're curious about that. And I will talk to you soon. Bye.